Over the coming days in Beijing, the leadership of the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, is meeting behind closed doors for what is known as the Fourth Plenum, a four-day gathering of senior party officials. Scheduled for October 20th to 23rd, 2025, this meeting is seen as crucial for shaping China's next national blueprint, the 15th five-year plan covering 2026 to 2030. At the centre of this gathering is President and Party General Secretary Xi Jinping, who will preside over the meeting and steer the agenda. This plenum arrives at a moment of heightened global and domestic pressure for China. On the international front, trade and technological tensions with the United States remain acute, particularly as Beijing seeks to reduce reliance on foreign technology and America intensifies export restrictions and tariff threats. Domestically, China faces slower growth, weak consumer spending and an ageing population, even as exports and industrial production continue at modest pace. Analysts expect the meeting to produce themes and signals more than detailed numeric targets. The full plan will only be revealed at China's annual legislative session in March 2026. The agenda is widely expected to emphasize technological self-reliance with investment in AI, semiconductors, advanced manufacturing and green energy, economic security and transformation, with a shift in emphasis away from simply chasing high GDP growth toward upgrading the economy structure and reducing external dependencies. Social policy and welfare, including welfare expansion, family and elderly support, as China grapples with demographic change and youth unemployment. Party governance and personnel decisions, with speculation over military and high-level government purges and appointments ahead of the plenum. A correspondent in central Beijing visited a busy evening market where locals were browsing for the best deals on everyday groceries. The reason? A sense that economic vitality is receding. According to official data, China's growth in the third quarter of 2025 slipped to its weakest rate this year. Although exports have held up relatively well, courtesy of strong global demand and diverse markets, domestic consumer spending continues to lag behind. In the market, shoppers voiced concerns about jobs, future incomes, and whether the state will help them through reforms. On the ground, wage growth has been soft, youth unemployment high, and the property slump still dragging. Local residents are keenly watching how the government will translate the plenum's outcome into meaningful relief. For example, by boosting benefits for families and the elderly, or by freeing up more cash flow for ordinary households. A senior academic at Beijing Foreign Studies University and senior research fellow at the Center for China and Globalization explained the broader significance. We really have to look at two key dates, 2035 and 2049, to really understand the importance of the next five-year plan. 2049 is when China has set a goal of becoming a modern socialist power. 2035 is when China aims to achieve what it calls basic modernization. So when we look at this upcoming plan, it will advance these objectives by 2035. In other words, the upcoming plan is not just about the next 5 years, it's part of China's much bigger timeline. Reaching basic modernization by 2035 is one milestone. The ultimate goal is to become a modern socialist power by 2049. The next two five-year plans, the 15th and 16th, are therefore seen as critically important stages in this multi-decade march. The plan will cover ambitions across a wide range of sectors, advanced technology, not limited to IT/AI, but also healthcare, agriculture, etc., government reform, economic liberalization, though within the current political model, and social organization. But the academic noted that beneath the lofty goals lie serious challenges. I think there's a lot of hope that we will see some sort of major transformation in consumption, and I think those hopes might be misplaced. The Chinese view is that industrial transformation has to be the priority. Now, this doesn't mean consumption doesn't matter, but I don't think overconsumption is in the cards for China. That being said, China still dealing with the legacy of the real estate boom and subsequent bust, demographic aging population, youth unemployment. These are on the government's radar screen. But I think the government's conclusion is its strategy has largely been a success, and we will see a doubling down of its priorities rather than any dramatic shift going forward. In short, while external observers may expect a turn toward consumer-led growth, China's leadership appears intent on staying the course, emphasizing industrial and technological transformation over easy stimulus or consumer spending booms. The property crisis, real estate sector overhang, and demographic decline add complexity. Growth may not be robust in the short term, but the priority is long-term structural change. Another dimension to this plenum is that it is a key moment for internal party maneuvering and power management. In recent days, China has publicly expelled senior military figures, including top officers in the People's Army, in a sweeping anti-corruption campaign. Observers view these moves as underscoring President Xi's consolidation of control both over the military and party personnel. The plenum is therefore expected to provide clues about the leadership's next personnel moves, including potential reshuffles of the Politburo, Standing Committee, and senior military posts. Some analysts see the meeting as setting the stage for a fourth presidential term beginning in 2027. Experts say the full 5-year plan will only be made public in March 2026, but this week's plenum will generate signals, a communiqué or summary, that will be closely analysed for policy direction. Key items to keep an eye on: whether a new, lower GDP growth target appears, some estimate approximately 4.5% to 5%, rather than the higher targets of past decades. The balance between consumption and investment in the economic model. Will China concede a larger role for domestic consumption or continue emphasizing industrial output and technology? Government plans for social welfare, elderly care, family support, unemployment as part of stabilizing domestic demand, signals of military reform or personnel changes at senior levels, which could reflect shifts in the real power structure, the tone of language around technology and national security, especially in biotechnology, semiconductors, and AI, where China aims to close the gap with the West. Any indication of external openness versus internal focus? Will China signal more global engagement or reinforce a self-reliant, inward-facing model? The decisions made in Beijing will resonate far beyond China's domestic space. China is the world's second-largest economy. Its industrial supply chains, exports, and consumption patterns influence global production, commodity markets, and trade flows. A stronger focus on high-tech self-reliance means more emphasis on semiconductors, rare earths, and advanced manufacturing, sectors where China is already pushing hard and where the US and other countries are paying attention. At the same time, weak Chinese consumer growth or structural slowdowns drag on global trade, affecting emerging markets that rely on Chinese demand. The plenum's emphasis on economic security and technology also intersects with the geopolitical rivalry between China and the United States. The meeting occurs just ahead of a potential summit between President Donald Trump of the United States and Xi. It's no coincidence that the leadership gathers now amid intense external pressure and internal urgency. Back in the Beijing market, the mood is cautious. For ordinary shoppers and workers, the big question is, what steps will the government take to shore up incomes, protect jobs, and stimulate spending? While industrial growth may remain strong, many consumers feel cut off from the upsides, with stagnant wages, high housing costs, and uncertain job prospects. If the plenum signals greater investment in social welfare, elderly care, family support, and consumer-oriented policy, that could help boost household cash flows and confidence. But if the emphasis remains heavily on heavy industry, innovation, and export-led manufacturing, then short-term relief may be limited. The direction China chooses will affect not only economic data, but people's lives, and ultimately the legitimacy of the CCP's governance model. This week's plenum is far more than a routine policy meeting. It is a high-stakes gathering that will set the tone for China's trajectory from 2026 to 2030 and signal how the country plans to navigate the crossroads of slowing growth, technological competition, and global uncertainty. As one analyst put it, China isn't simply planning 5 years at a time. It is lining up decades ahead, anchoring the upcoming plan in the context of 2035 and 2049. What emerges from the plenum will show how Beijing intends to move from its current position into the next stage of its national project. The markets, governments, companies and consumers around the world will be watching, and so will the millions of Chinese at markets, just like the one in central Beijing, wondering what it all will mean for their jobs, incomes and daily lives.